Commander Zaxthara had seen death in 1,000 forms across 47 different worlds. The scarred chitin covering her forearms bore witness to battles that had claimed entire star systems, and her compound eyes had watched civilizations burn under the might of the hegemony war machine. She was a Kethvar, one of the most feared warrior species in the known galaxy, bred for combat and raised on conquest. Fear was a foreign concept to her kind. Yet as she stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Worldrender, watching the tactical displays flicker with impossible readings, something cold crawled up her spine for the first time in her 300-year military career. Commander, her aide, Subcommander Vrax, approached with his usual measured steps, but there was tension in his mandibles. The human fleet has arrived at the Kepler 442 system. ZYX-Thara's primary eyes remained fixed on the holographic display showing the besieged mining colony of Ferrum 7. For 6 months, the hegemony had been systematically dismantling human resistance across the Outer Rim territories. It should have been routine. Humans were barely past their chemical rocket phase when first contact occurred, and even with captured alien technology, they remained laughably primitive compared to species that had been waging interstellar war for millennia. The Kethvar had personally overseen the destruction of 17 human colonies, each one falling within days of the hegemony's arrival. The humans fought with desperate courage. She would grant them that, but courage meant little against plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Their ships were cobbled together amalgamations of stolen tech and industrial equipment, barely worthy of the name warship. "How many vessels?" she asked, her voice carrying the clicking undertones that marked her species' speech. 43 ships, Commander. A mix of their converted cargo haulers and those new Corvette-class vessels they've been producing. ZYX-Thara almost laughed. The hegemony fleet at Ferrum 7 numbered over 200 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts like her own. The humans were sending what amounted to a patrol squadron against a full battle group. It would be a massacre, a brief, ugly one that would hopefully convince the remaining human colonies to surrender rather than face similar destruction. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Standard formation. Let them come to us. I want this finished quickly." The bridge fell into the familiar rhythm of pre-battle preparations. Weapons charged, shields raised to full power, and targeting systems locked onto the approaching human vessels. Through the viewports, Ferrum 7 hung in space like a wounded animal, its surface scarred by orbital bombardment, and its defensive stations reduced to glowing debris fields. The human miners had held out longer than expected, using the asteroid belt's complex gravitational fields and dense mineral deposits to their advantage. They had turned mining equipment into weapons, rig haulers to explode like massive bombs, and fought with a ferocity that had actually impressed some of Zexthara's subordinates. But raw determination could only accomplish so much against superior technology and overwhelming numbers. "Human vessels coming into range," Vrax reported. "They're, Commander, they're not slowing down." ZYX-Thara's attention sharpened. Standard human tactics involve cautious long-range engagements, using their primitive missiles and kinetic weapons while trying to stay outside the effective range of hegemony energy weapons. Charging directly into a superior force went against everything in their tactical database. Elaborate. They're accelerating. Straight at us. No evasive maneuvers, no formations. They're just coming. Through her tactical implants, ZYX-Thara could feel the data flowing from the fleet's sensor networks. The human ships were indeed charging forward at maximum acceleration, their engines burning bright enough to be visible to the naked eye. Some were already showing signs of structural stress from the extreme forces involved. "Suicide run," she mused. "Desperate but not unexpected. Target the largest vessels first. Don't let them get close enough to ram." The order rippled through the fleet, and space lit up with energy discharges as hegemony vessels opened fire. The first human ship died immediately, its makeshift armor no match for concentrated plasma fire. Then the second. The third lasted slightly longer, its hull seeming to absorb more punishment than usual before breaking apart in a spectacular fireball. But something was wrong. The human fleet wasn't behaving like desperate defenders making a final stand. There was coordination here, purpose beyond mere sacrifice. As the first wave of human ships died, more kept coming from unexpected vectors, ships that should have been detected by hegemony sensors, but somehow weren't showing up until they were almost on top of the fleet. "Commander," her sensor operator called out, confusion evident in his vocal patterns. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human vessels. They're doing something to their reactors." HFY felt the first real stirring of unease. In all her campaigns against primitive species, she had never seen energy readings like this. The human ships were pushing their power plants far beyond safe operational limits, their engines and weapons drawing power at rates that should have caused immediate system failures. "They're killing themselves to get more speed," Vrax observed. "Some kind of deliberate reactor overload." That was when the first human ship reached effective range and opened fire. The energy beam that lanced out was impossible. The tactical computers struggled to classify it, their databases lacking any reference for the type of radiation being emitted. It struck the heavy cruiser conquest of world amidships and simply unmated. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but erased as if it had never existed. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronic systems and the soft clicking of Kethvar breathing. HFY stared at the empty space where a kilometer-long warship had been moments before. "What did they just do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, 2 more human ships had reached range, and 2 more hegemony vessels simply vanished. The remaining human fleet was closing rapidly, their numbers seemingly larger than the original count as more ships appeared from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field. "Emergency jump," HFY commanded. "All ships, emergency translation to hyperspace." "Jump drives are not responding, Commander," her navigator reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Something is interfering with our translation matrices." The humans had done something to local space-time, creating interference patterns that prevented hyperspace entry. The hegemony fleet was trapped in normal space with an enemy that had just demonstrated the ability to delete their ships from existence. More human vessels were reaching engagement range, and each one that opened fire removed another hegemony ship from reality. The energy signatures were off the charts now, readings that suggested the humans were somehow weaponizing the fundamental forces of creation itself. "How is this possible?" Vrax demanded. "They're barely out of their home system. They don't have this technology." HFY watched another of her escorts disappear and felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Genuine terror. Not fear of death or defeat, but the deeper horror of encountering something that made no sense, something that violated every law of warfare and physics she understood. The humans weren't using any technology in the hegemony databases. They weren't following any known tactical doctrines. They were doing something entirely new, something that transformed ramshackle cargo vessels into instruments of impossible destruction. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead human vessel," her communications officer reported. "Put through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of one of the human ships. The figure addressing them was clearly human, bipedal, soft-skinned, lacking any obvious predatory adaptations. By all rights, they should have been prey species, suitable only for manual labor or food production. But the human looking back at HFY had eyes like dark ice, and when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had already won. "Hegemony Commander," the human said, his words translated by the universal linguistic matrix. "My name is Admiral Chun, representing the United Earth Defense Coalition. You have 47 seconds to withdraw your forces from this system before we demonstrate what human desperation actually looks like." HFY found her voice. "What have you done? What is that weapon?" Admiral Chin's expression didn't change. "You came to our worlds, destroyed our colonies, enslaved our people. You thought you knew what humans were capable of. His smile was terrible to behold. You were wrong. 38 seconds. Another hegemony ship vanished as a human corvette, barely 200 meters long, fired something that reality itself seemed unable to process. The tactical computers were displaying error messages now, their programming unable to categorize what they were observing. "Commander," Vrax whispered, "we need to withdraw. Whatever they've done, we can't fight it." HFY stared at the tactical display, showing her fleet being systematically erased by an inferior force using impossible weapons. In 3 centuries of warfare, she had never retreated from battle. The Kethvar didn't run from prey species armed with primitive technology. But, as another dreadnought simply ceased to exist, taking its crew of 10,000 with it, she realized that everything she thought she knew about humans had been catastrophically wrong. "Signal all ships," she said, her voice hoarse. "Full retreat. Maximum burn to the system periphery." The remaining hegemony vessels turned and fled, their mighty engines straining to put distance between themselves and the advancing human fleet. Behind them, Admiral Chen's voice followed on an open channel, calm and implacable. "Tell your hegemony council," the humans said. "Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity has stopped running." As the Worldrender escaped the system's gravity well and jumped to hyperspace, HFY stood frozen at her command station, staring at the tactical readings from the battle. 43 human ships had destroyed or driven off a fleet 5 times their size, using weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that violated every principle of space warfare. She had served the hegemony faithfully for 3 centuries, believing in their natural right to rule over lesser species. That certainty was gone now, replaced by a growing realization that they had awakened something terrible in their human prey. The war was about to change, and for the first time in her life, Commander HFY was genuinely afraid. The Hegemony High Council Chamber had seen declarations of war against hundreds of species, but never had its curved walls echoed with the kind of stunned silence that followed Commander HFY's report. The assembled representatives of 12 different species sat motionless as the tactical recordings played across the chamber's central display, showing hegemony dreadnoughts simply vanishing under human fire. High Counselor Mrektar, the elderly Vorthak who had overseen the conquest of 37 worlds, was the first to speak. "You're telling us that 43 primitive vessels destroyed an entire battle group." HFY stood at attention in the center of the chamber, her scarred carapace catching the harsh light from overhead. Around her, the most powerful beings in known space struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. "That is correct, High Counselor. We lost 137 ships in the engagement. The humans suffered minimal casualties." Counselor Hasketh of the Zalani Collective leaned forward, his crystalline features refracting the display's light into prismatic patterns. "The energy signatures you recorded, our best scientists cannot explain them. These readings suggest the humans are manipulating fundamental forces at a quantum level." "Impossible," snapped General Thrakmar, the massive Bruthan representative. "The humans lack the scientific foundation for such technology. 6 months ago, their most advanced weapons were chemical rockets and metal projectiles." HFY had spent the 3-day journey to the capital running those same thoughts through her mind. Nothing about the battle made sense according to established doctrine. The hegemony had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force, principles that had never failed against younger species. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "our intelligence regarding human capabilities was incomplete." The chamber erupted into angry chittering, growling, and electronic harmonics as the council members expressed their displeasure. The hegemony's intelligence network was the finest in the galaxy, capable of infiltrating any civilization and cataloging their technological development with precise accuracy. High Counselor Mrektar raised a gnarled appendage for silence. "Intelligence Director Velnash, present your analysis." The director emerged from the chamber shadows, her Netheran form barely visible except for the glowing neural patterns along her elongated skull. Honored Council, we have maintained surveillance on human space for 2 of their years. Our assessment remains unchanged. Humanity is a pre-interstellar species with limited technological sophistication. She gestured, and new images appeared on the display. Human ships under construction, clearly showing the improvised nature of their hulls and the obvious integration of captured hegemony technology. These vessels are assembled in converted industrial facilities using stolen components and primitive manufacturing techniques. They should not be capable of the destruction Commander Zoyaxthara witnessed. Yet they are, Zoyaxthara said quietly. I saw 3 dreadnoughts die. Counselors, ships that had survived battles against the Corvin Empire and the machine worlds of Epsilon Eridani. The humans made them simply stop existing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Counselor Ythera of the Symphonic Reaches spoke, her voice a melodic harmony that barely concealed her unease. Director Velnash, could the humans have acquired unknown technology from another source? Perhaps artifact from the predecessor ruins. Negative, Counselor. We have monitored all known predecessor sites. No human expeditions have accessed advanced archaeological zones. General Throckmar slammed a massive fist onto his chair's armrest. Then explain it. Species don't simply develop weapons capable of erasing matter from existence overnight. Director Velnash hesitated for the first time in Zoyaxthara's memory. There is one possibility. Recent intelligence suggests the humans have been conducting extensive research into what they term exotic matter and quantum field manipulation. However, our analysts dismissed these efforts as theoretical exercises with no practical applications. Show us, High Councilor Mrektar commanded. The display shifted to surveillance footage from human research facilities, sterile laboratories where scientists worked with incomprehensible equipment, massive particle accelerators buried deep beneath planetary surfaces, and strange geometric structures that seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. The humans appear to be investigating fundamental aspects of reality itself, the director explained. They have constructed devices that can create artificial gravitational fields, manipulate space-time curvature, and generate what they call zero-point energy. Our science division concluded these were primitive attempts to understand forces beyond their comprehension. Zoyaxthara watched the footage with growing unease. The human scientists moved with purpose and confidence, not the fumbling uncertainty of a species dabbling in forces they didn't understand. There is something in their expressions, a focused intensity that she had seen before in the eyes of the most dangerous warriors. They're weaponizing physics itself, she realized aloud. The council chamber fell silent again. Counselor Hasketh's crystalline form flickered as he processed the implications. If they have learned to manipulate reality at a quantum level, they could theoretically unmake anything, completed Counselor Ythera. Matter, energy, even space-time itself becomes mutable. General Throckmar was shaking his massive head. I refuse to believe that a species still using chemical propulsion 6 months ago has mastered forces that the hegemony has studied for millennia without fully understanding. Belief is irrelevant, Zoyaxthara said, her voice carrying an edge that made several counselors shift uncomfortably. I watched it happen. The humans have developed something that renders our conventional military doctrine obsolete. High Councilor Mrektar leaned back in his throne-like chair, his ancient eyes thoughtful. Director Velnash, update your intelligence assessment immediately. I want to know everything about human research capabilities, their industrial capacity, and any other surprises they might have prepared. It shall be done, High Counselor. However, there is another matter requiring immediate attention. The director gestured, and the display showed a star map of human space. Following the Ferrum 7 incident, human forces have been advancing aggressively into previously occupied territories. They have already liberated 7 colonies and are moving toward the core systems. The tactical display updated to show human fleet movements, and HFY felt her confidence drain further. The human advance wasn't the desperate push of a species fighting for survival. It was a methodical, coordinated campaign that demonstrated strategic thinking far beyond what their previous actions had suggested. Impossible, General Trocmar. They lacked the industrial base to support major fleet operations. Apparently not, Director Velnash replied. Intelligence suggests the humans have been preparing for expanded operations for months. Hidden shipyards, stockpiled resources, and a manufacturing capacity we severely underestimated. HFY studied the tactical projections and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. They've been planning this. The previous battles, the apparently desperate resistance. It was all misdirection. You're suggesting the humans deliberately allowed us to conquer their outer colonies? Counselor Ythera's harmonic voice carried notes of disbelief. I'm suggesting they wanted us to underestimate them, HFY replied. Every engagement taught them about our capabilities while hiding their own true strength. They let us think we were hunting prey when we were actually being studied by predators. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. The hegemony had built its empire on the assumption of technological and tactical superiority over younger species. If the humans could match or exceed that advantage while maintaining the element of surprise, traditional conquest doctrine might prove inadequate. High Counselor Mrektar rose from his chair, his movements showing the weight of his years and responsibilities. General Thrakmar, what are our military options? The massive Broodhan considered for several moments. If the humans possess weapons capable of negating our technological advantages, conventional fleet engagements become problematic. We could attempt orbital bombardment from extreme range, but their ships demonstrated impressive speed and maneuverability. What about the reserve fleets? 7,300 ships across 18 sectors. But if human weapons can eliminate dreadnoughts as easily as they did at Ferrum 7, he left the sentence hanging. Director Velnash stepped forward. Honor Council, there may be alternatives to direct military confrontation. The humans still depend on conventional infrastructure. Their industrial facilities, population centers, and resource networks remain vulnerable to disruption. You're suggesting terrorism, Counselor Hasketh observed, his crystalline form dimming slightly. I'm suggesting we adapt our tactics to match the changed threat assessment. If the humans have achieved technological parity in one area, we must exploit our advantages in others. HFY listened to the discussion with growing discomfort. Throughout her career, the hegemony had won through superior force and intimidation, not through desperate measures against equals. The fact that they were now considering asymmetric warfare against a species they had dismissed as primitive marked a fundamental shift in the galactic balance of power. There is another consideration, she interjected. The human commander at Ferrum 7 demonstrated advanced tactical thinking and strategic patience. If they have been planning this campaign for months or years, they have likely anticipated our potential responses. The chamber fell quiet as the council absorbed this assessment. If the humans had indeed been preparing for extended warfare against a superior opponent, they would have developed contingencies for every obvious hegemony countermeasure. High Counselor Mrektar returned to his throne, looking older than his centuries. We need more information. Director Velnash, initiate deep intelligence penetration of human space. I want to know their true capabilities, their strategic objectives, and, most importantly, how they developed weapons that can erase our ships from existence. And our military response? General Thrakmar asked. Defensive positions until we understand what we're facing, the High Counselor decided. Pull back our forward fleets to fortified systems and prepare for the possibility that this war is about to become far more difficult than we anticipated. As the council session concluded and the various representatives filed out of the chamber, the HFY remained standing in the center of the vast room. The recordings of the Ferrum 7 battle continued to play on the display, showing human ships performing impossible maneuvers and firing weapons that violated the known laws of physics. For the first time in 3 centuries, she wondered if the hegemony might actually lose a war. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the observation dome of Research Station Prometheus, watching the blue-white glow of the experimental reactor through layers of reinforced transparent aluminum. The massive structure floating in space before her represented humanity's most ambitious scientific achievement, a controlled environment for manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. 6 months ago, she had been a theoretical physicist working on arcane mathematical models that most of her colleagues considered interesting, but impractical. Today, she was the lead scientist for humanity's most classified military project, and the weapons they had developed were rewriting the rules of interstellar warfare. "Doctor, the Admiral is ready for the briefing," her assistant, Lieutenant Commander Park, announced from the entrance to the observation dome. Elena turned away from the mesmerizing display of contained exotic matter and made her way through the station's corridors toward the command center. The walls were lined with equations and diagrams that would have been incomprehensible to most people. Mathematical descriptions of forces that could tear apart the fabric of space-time or rebuild it according to human will. The command center buzzed with activity as scientists and military personnel worked side by side, their screens displaying readings from ongoing experiments and tactical projections from human fleet operations throughout the Outer Rim. Admiral Chun stood at the central holographic display, studying the latest intelligence reports from hegemony space. Dr. Vasquez, he acknowledged her arrival without taking his eyes from the tactical data. "Your weapons performed exactly as predicted at Ferrum 7. The hegemony fleet suffered total defeat with minimal human casualties." Elena nodded, though she felt no satisfaction in the destruction they had unleashed. Each ship that had been erased from existence had carried thousands of living beings, reduced to nothing by the forces she had learned to control. The quantum displacement weapons functioned within acceptable parameters, Admiral. However, we're approaching the limits of what our current power systems can support. Admiral Chun finally turned to face her, his expression serious. "Explain." Elena gestured toward a secondary display that showed power consumption data from the recent battle. The exotic matter reactors can generate enormous amounts of energy, but manipulating quantum fields on the scale necessary to affect enemy vessels requires exponential power increases. Each shot from our displacement weapons drains approximately 12% of a ship's total energy reserves, meaning our vessels have limited engagement capacity, the Admiral concluded. "How many shots per ship?" 7, maybe 8 before the reactor requires a complete recharge cycle. In a prolonged engagement against multiple targets, our ships would be vulnerable. Lieutenant Commander Park stepped forward with a datapad. "Sir, intelligence has confirmed that the hegemony is pulling their fleets back to defensive positions. They appear to be regrouping rather than pursuing immediate counterattacks." Admiral Chun studied the strategic projections, his weathered face showing the strain of commanding humanity's first real military victory against an interstellar opponent. "They're afraid." "Good. But fear makes enemies unpredictable, and we can't assume they won't adapt to our tactics." Elena had been thinking about that problem for weeks. The quantum displacement weapons gave humanity a decisive advantage in ship-to-ship combat, but they were still limited by conventional physics in many ways. "Admiral, we've identified several potential vulnerabilities in our current approach. The hegemony could develop countermeasures if they understand the principles behind our weapons." "What kind of countermeasures?" Elena activated a holographic model showing the interaction between exotic matter fields and normal space-time. "Our weapons work by creating localized regions where the fundamental constants of physics are altered. We essentially convince reality that a target doesn't exist by manipulating the quantum fields that define matter and energy. However, if the hegemony learns to generate inverse fields, they could neutralize our weapons," Admiral Chen finished. "Worse, they could potentially turn the effect back on us. The mathematics are symmetric. If you understand how to unmake something, you also understand how to protect against being unmade. The command center fell quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity's greatest weapon could become their greatest vulnerability if the enemy learned to duplicate or counter it. What do you recommend, Doctor? Admiral Chen asked. Elena had been preparing for this question since the first successful test of the displacement weapons. We accelerate Phase 2 of the research program. Instead of just unmaking enemy ships, we start remaking reality according to our specifications. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show theoretical projections of even more advanced applications of exotic matter manipulation. Ships that could phase through solid matter. Weapons that could alter the flow of time around targets. Defensive systems that could make human vessels exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. We call it the Prometheus Project, she continued, named after the Titan who stole fire from the gods. We're taking the fundamental forces of creation and making them serve human purposes. Admiral Chun studied the projections with obvious fascination and concern. Risks? Substantial, Elena admitted. We're essentially teaching ourselves to rewrite the laws of physics within localized areas. The potential for catastrophic accidents is... She paused, searching for appropriate words. Let me put it this way. A failure in our current weapons might destroy a ship. A failure in the Prometheus technology could potentially unravel reality itself within a significant radius. How significant? Our worst-case models suggest a cascade failure could affect an entire star system. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of electronic systems and the distant vibration of the station's artificial gravity generators. Lieutenant Commander Park cleared his throat nervously. Doctor, are you saying we could accidentally destroy our own solar system? I'm saying we're working with forces that make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers, Elena replied. Every test, every application requires extreme precision and multiple safety protocols. But the potential applications. She activated another set of projections. Ships that can travel faster than light without hyperspace technology. Weapons that can affect targets across galactic distances. The ability to literally terraform worlds by adjusting their fundamental physical properties. Admiral Chun was quiet for several minutes, weighing the enormous potential against the equally enormous risks. Finally, he spoke. How long until we have operational prototypes? 6 months for basic applications. 2 years for full implementation. But, Admiral, I must stress that this technology will fundamentally change not just human military capabilities, but human civilization itself. We're crossing a threshold that we can never uncross. The hegemony has forced that choice on us, Admiral, Chun replied grimly. They came to our worlds with superior technology and attempted to subjugate our species. If we don't advance our capabilities beyond their ability to counter them, humanity won't survive as an independent civilization. Elena nodded, understanding the logic even as she worried about the consequences. There's another consideration. The mathematical principles behind these technologies. Once we fully understand them, the knowledge will be impossible to contain. Other species will eventually develop similar capabilities, whether through their own research or by studying our applications. You're talking about a complete transformation of galactic warfare, Lieutenant Commander Park observed. More than that, Elena corrected. We're talking about a transformation of the galaxy itself. When multiple species can manipulate fundamental forces at will, the very nature of space, time, and matter becomes negotiable. Star systems could be moved. Entire regions of space could be restructured. The laws of physics become tools rather than constraints. Admiral Chun turned back to the tactical displays, showing human fleet positions throughout the outer rim. Doctor, I want you to begin Phase 2 immediately. But I also want you to develop protocols for containing this technology, if necessary. If we're about to hand the galaxy the power to remake itself, we need to ensure humanity maintains some degree of control over the process. Understood, Admiral. But there's something else we need to consider. Our intelligence suggests the hegemony isn't the only major power in this region of space. There are other species, other empires that may view humanity's emergence as a threat to their own interests. The Admiral's expression darkened. The hegemony has been expanding for centuries, conquering younger species and absorbing their technology. If they represent just one faction among many, then we may be facing a much larger conflict than we initially anticipated, Elena finished. Our weapons have proven effective against hegemony technology, but we don't know how they'll perform against completely different technological approaches. Some species might have developed their own exotic science applications or defensive systems we haven't encountered yet. Lieutenant Commander Park was studying the intelligence reports. Sir, there are confirmed contacts with at least 6 other major spacefaring civilizations within 50 light-years of human space. If the hegemony shares information about our capabilities, then we could find ourselves facing a coalition of species determined to prevent humanity from developing further, Admiral Chen concluded. Doctor, how quickly can we deploy the current generation of quantum displacement weapons to our entire fleet? Elena consulted her datapad. 3 weeks for full deployment, assuming we convert every available industrial facility to weapons production. However, training crews to operate the systems safely will take considerably longer. Begin immediately and accelerate the Prometheus project timeline. If we're going to face multiple alien empires, we need every possible advantage. As the briefing concluded and the various personnel returned to their duties, Elena remained in the command center, staring at the holographic projections of technologies that could reshape the fundamental nature of reality. 6 months ago, humanity had been a primitive species struggling with basic interstellar travel. Now, they were on the verge of becoming something that could challenge the established order of the entire galaxy. The question was whether they would survive long enough to fully understand the forces they were unleashing, or whether their own success would ultimately destroy them. As she watched the exotic matter readings fluctuate on her instruments, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to discover there were far more dangerous things in the universe than the hegemony's conventional military might. In the depths of space, reality itself was becoming humanity's weapon, and the consequences would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The Nexus Point had served as the galaxy's neutral meeting ground for over 2,000 years, a massive space station positioned at the gravitational balance between 5 different star systems. Representatives of dozens of species gathered here to conduct diplomacy, trade negotiations, and, occasionally, to witness events that would reshape the known universe. Commander HFY had never expected to find herself in the station's grand assembly chamber, standing before the collected representatives of the Galaxy Council as she delivered what amounted to the hegemony's surrender. Around her, beings from across known space sat in shocked silence as she recounted the systematic destruction of their military forces by human weapons that seemed to operate outside the laws of physics. The past 3 months have been a nightmare of constant retreats and impossible defeats. Every time the hegemony attempted to engage human forces, their ships simply vanished under weapons fire that defied analysis. Worse, the humans had begun deploying technologies that went far beyond simple destruction. Entire hegemony fleets had been found floating derelict in space, their crews unconscious, and their ship's systems completely rewritten at a fundamental level. Honored representatives, HFY continued, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that render conventional military doctrine obsolete. They have learned to manipulate the basic forces that govern reality itself. Ambassador Tichosura of the Collective Minds leaned forward, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated thought patterns. Commander, you're describing impossibilities. No species achieves mastery over exotic matter manipulation within mere months of discovering interstellar travel. Nevertheless, it has occurred, HFY replied firmly. I have witnessed human vessels phase through solid matter, travel faster than light without hyperspace technology, and remake the fundamental properties of space-time in localized areas. They are no longer the primitive species we first encountered. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of sounds as representatives expressed their disbelief, fear, and anger in dozens of different languages and communication methods. High Arbiter Krental, the ancient being who had moderated council sessions for 8 centuries, called for order with a harmonic tone that resonated through the station structure. "Show us," he commanded simply. HFY activated the holographic display system, and the chamber filled with tactical recordings from the Battle of Rigel Station. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as human ships performed maneuvers that violated every known principle of physics, their weapons erasing hegemony vessel from existence, while seemingly defying concepts like conservation of mass and energy. But it was the final sequence that caused the true uproar. A single human ship, barely 300 meters in length, approached the massive hegemony fortress station that controlled the entire Rigel system. Instead of attacking, the human vessel simply touched the station's outer hull, and the entire structure began to change. Metal flowed like liquid, restructuring itself according to patterns that human technology somehow imposed upon it. Within minutes, the fortress had been converted into something that served human purposes instead of hegemony ones. "They're not just destroying our forces," HFY explained as the recording ended. "They're converting them. Our own infrastructure becomes theirs through some process that our scientists cannot understand or duplicate." Ambassador Velmoth of the Trade Consortium, a species that had remained neutral in most galactic conflicts for millennia, spoke in a voice heavy with concern. "If the humans can restructure matter at will, what prevents them from doing the same to inhabited worlds, to entire star systems?" "Nothing," HFY admitted. "And that is why the hegemony formally requests council intervention. This is no longer a local conflict between the hegemony and a rebellious species. Humanity has become a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy." The chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence as the implications sank in. For thousands of years, the Galaxy Council had maintained peace through a careful balance of power between various species and empires. No single faction had ever possessed the capability to fundamentally alter the nature of reality itself. High Arbiter Krental's ancient features showed the weight of his years as he processed the information. "Commander, what are the humans' stated objectives? Have they made demands or issued ultimatums?" "That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the situation," HFY replied. "They have made no demands. They simply continue advancing through hegemony space, converting our facilities and incorporating our territory into their expanding sphere of influence. They appear to be—" She paused, struggling to find the appropriate words. "They appear to be systematically reshaping local space according to their preferences." Ambassador HFY's crystalline form dimmed noticeably. "Are you suggesting they intend to remake the entire galaxy to suit human needs?" "I am suggesting that their capabilities make such an objective feasible," HFY answered. "Whether that is their intention or not, the power they wield could accomplish it." The debate that followed lasted for hours as representatives struggled to comprehend a species that could manipulate the fundamental nature of reality. Some argued for immediate military intervention by the combined forces of the Galaxy Council. Others suggested attempting diplomatic contact to understand human intentions. A few recommended complete withdrawal from the region until humanity's capabilities could be better understood. It was during this debate that the Chamber's communication systems activated, displaying an incoming transmission on emergency priority channels. High Arbiter Krental accepted the signal, and the massive display screens showed the bridge of a human starship. The figure addressing them was clearly human, Admiral Chun, whose image had become familiar to hegemony intelligence through months of battlefield recordings. But there was something different about him now, something in his eyes that suggested he had seen and understood things that changed a being on a fundamental level. "Honored representatives of the Galaxy Council," Admiral Chun began, his words automatically translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. I'm Admiral Michael Chun, speaking on behalf of the United Human Republic. We are aware that our recent activities have caused concern among the galactic community. High Arbiter Krental spoke for the Assembly. Admiral Chun, the hegemony has presented evidence of human weapons that appear to violate the known laws of physics. The Council requires explanation of your species' intentions and capabilities. Admiral Chun was quiet for several moments, and when he spoke again, there was something almost sad in his voice. Honored Arbiter, 3 months ago, humanity was a small collection of colonies struggling to survive against hegemony aggression. We were forced to make choices that no species should have to make, to develop technologies that perhaps no species should possess. Explain these technologies, Ambassador Velmoth demanded. We have learned to manipulate what we call exotic matter, the quantum fields that define the nature of space, time, and physical reality. Through careful application of these principles, we can alter fundamental constants within localized areas, effectively rewriting the laws of physics to serve our purposes. The chamber fell silent as the humans confirmed what many had feared. Ambassador HFY Sci-Fi finally spoke. Admiral, such capabilities represent a threat to every civilized species in the galaxy. What assurances can you provide that humanity will not use these technologies against peaceful worlds? Admiral Chen's expression became distant, as if he was remembering something painful. Ambassador, we have already discovered that there are consequences to wielding such power. Every application of exotic matter manipulation creates ripple effects throughout local space-time. We are literally reshaping reality, and reality is beginning to reshape us in return. What do you mean? High Arbiter Krental asked. Our scientists have detected fundamental changes in the structure of space within human-controlled regions. The laws of physics themselves are becoming more flexible. Matter behaves differently. Time flows at variable rates. Consciousness itself appears to be evolving in response to exposure to exotic matter fields. Ziwaixthara felt a chill as she processed the implications. You're saying the technology is changing you as a species? We're saying the technology is changing everything, Admiral Chen replied. Every world we've liberated from hegemony control is now subject to altered physical laws. Our people are developing capabilities that we don't fully understand, and the changes appear to be irreversible. Ambassador Velmoth leaned forward intently. Admiral, are you requesting Council assistance in containing these effects? Admiral Chen's laugh was bitter. Ambassador, I'm warning you that containment may no longer be possible. We opened a door that perhaps should have remained closed, and now forces are in motion that may affect the entire galaxy, whether we will it or not. The chamber erupted into chaos as representatives realized the true scope of what they faced. This wasn't simply a military threat that could be contained through conventional diplomacy or force. Humanity had unleashed changes that could fundamentally alter the nature of reality throughout known space. High Arbiter Krental called for order, his harmonics carrying notes of deep concern. Admiral Chun, what do you propose the Council should do with this information? Prepare, Admiral Chun said simply. The galaxy is changing, and every species will need to adapt or be left behind. We've proven that the laws of physics are more flexible than anyone imagined. Others will learn to manipulate these forces as well, whether through their own research or by studying our applications. And humanity's role in this new galaxy? Ziwaixthara asked, speaking without permission but needing to know. Admiral Chun looked directly at her through the transmission, and his eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond normal comprehension. We will guide the transition as best we can, Commander. We broke the old reality, so we accept responsibility for helping to build the new one. As the transmission ended and the chamber descended into frantic debate about humanity's revelation, Ziwaixthara stood motionless at her position. The war she had fought was over, but something far more significant was beginning. The galaxy itself was evolving. And at the center of that transformation was a species that had gone from primitive chemical rockets to reality manipulation in less than a year. For the first time in her 3 centuries of life, Commander Daxtera understood that she was witnessing the birth of something entirely new, a universe where the laws of physics serve the will of consciousness rather than constraining it. And at the heart of that transformation were the humans she had once dismissed as mere prey. The age of conventional warfare was ending. The age of reality warfare had begun.